Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this bright spring evening. On East Coast, it's a bit chilly. I'm not sure how it is in your area. I am Anita, and I welcome all of you who are joining us on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube Live on behalf of Manhattan Meditation Center. We gather every Thursday evening to talk on different topics which are kind of closely related with the different aspects of life. Today again we are touching on something very close to heart topic kind of thing. I think I won't be overstepping my boundaries if I say that we human beings are social animals or social beings, right? And the unit for the social structure or the society is family. We want to become part of the family. We want to create family. Marriages are performed with that keeping in mind, right? You become a part of the family and you also start a family. The foster care system is started with the same goal in mind to give a family environment to the children. Same is true for adopt a grandparent or big brother or big sister programs we have, right? The purpose of all of that is to give a environment of family, the sense of family, the connection with the family. And the biggest reason or the main reason for that is because our happiness is tied up with the family. We can achieve a lot of things in life. We can have great education, the best job possible, the house in the biggest, the biggest house in the best place. But if we don't have anyone with whom we can share, all those things become kind of meaningless, right? It loses its charm. Even if it's not meaningless, it does lose its charm, right? And that's why we kind of keep circling back to the family. People get divorced and get married again, and sometimes again and again. We do sense that nowadays family life is, or family as a unit, also has become the reason for unhappiness or stress, and we want to run away from family. That also happens, right? Sometimes we go to different cities, sometimes we end up going to different countries. But the interesting thing is, no matter where we go, we try to recreate a circle around us whom we want to call family. So ultimately, the whole thing is that our happiness, the purpose of our existence to a great extent, is tied up with the sense or or the existence of family, right? So today's topic is happiness in family life. So let's explore it from the lenses of the spirituality to see what happened to the happiness, where did it go, and is there a way to get it back? It's my good fortune to welcome today's speaker. We have a guest speaker, Dr. Annie Phillip. She's a pediatrician. She has been practicing medicine for 25 years with the focus of holistic approach to the family, like a complete family life. I don't think I can, ask anything better than that, right? She also has been practicing. She's associated with the Brahma Kumaris for 15 plus years, and she's a practicing yogi, a meditator, and a strong voice um, to share the ideas of the BKs also. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite Dr. Annie Phillip. Uh, Annie, you're very welcome. We welcome you on behalf, I welcome you on behalf of everyone. Although we are all here and watching, but unfortunately, being on Zoom, I am the voice for everyone. So, very warm welcome. We are all very eager to hear uh, your thoughts on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Very sweet and kind words. Um, I'm happy to be here today to share a few thoughts and experiences that have been gained along the way, um, both professionally and personally, as well as through the spiritual journey. So, look forward to your thoughts and comments and questions as we go along. And we'll start with a little brief presentation, hopefully brief, that will kind of touch on some of these topics and areas that we've been dealing with as a society as a whole. Um, and just some observations of what is happening and what um, we can do maybe as individuals and collectively to make things a little bit lighter, a little bit easier for all of us, and bring back that energy of joy and happiness. So we'll start with just some um, thoughts on what's happening around us. Before we do that, does anyone want to share what brought you to this session? Just so I can have an idea, maybe through the chat. What are some things that you might be searching for?
Their mics are also open, Annie. So, anyone wants to open their mic and just share why you are here today?
Can I go?
Sure.
Okay. Hi, Sister Annie. What I'm looking for is in a relationships to look for stay detached, but while staying attached. That's what I'm looking for.
Very nice. Very good. We'll touch on that for sure today.
Somebody texted peace of mind.
Okay. Very good.
Also, how to make family decisions. Sometimes, as a family, you have to make decisions, for the greater good of the family. And sometimes you have to sacrifice. You need to decide whether you sacrifice, your own. That's the balancing act, and that's very subtle. So that's where I'm looking for some spiritual guidance.
So the balance of self versus others in the family.
One more on the chat: how to make relationships sweeter when you get angry. Implementing in family is difficult.
Okay, very good. So when it's hard to control our emotions, when there's disagreements or things are not as we would like, how to make that a little bit more smooth in interaction. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, so we'll start by just going through some of the general ideas that have come up while thinking about these things. Are you able to see the slide? Okay.
Yes.
And Anita, I forgot to ask, is the sound okay?
Yes. Sound is good.
Very good. Okay. So in general, when we think about our life, there's a very simple dynamic that we can look at as interaction between the individual and the environment. And in that interaction, when things are going in a very easy way and harmonious way, we could say, there is a feeling of peace, which that can lead to harmony, happiness, peace, etc. But if things are not going very well, just want to make sure everybody's awake, then there can be feelings of stress and anxiety. And as someone mentioned, there could be disagreements, anger, other emotions that come up. So in a way, as many were alluding to, we are looking for harmony with our environment, whether that's with our family members, in our jobs, in friendships, whatever environmental factor we want to consider. So when this relationship with the environment, those around us, is what is determining our happiness, it's like we're giving power away to this environment. And as a result, we become like a servant or a slave, we could say. I chose the softer word. You can look at the model of a prison to see what that would look like, where someone else is deciding for us whether we are going to be sad or happy. And the person that, in this case, is the prisoner, has no choice. It's depending on somebody outside to determine their level of happiness. So, a master-servant relationship. And that relationship is basically triggered by expectations and desires from those outside, either people, places, things, etc. So is this necessary? Or can we become free of these desires? So there's references in history that we look at our lives and the world with colored glasses. And we see the world based on the color of those glasses. We connect that to a psychological model. We can say that our present model is one of desires and unlimited expectations, which are leading to addictions. And it's coming from this attachment to this I and mine. So the word my, when it's used with anything that is not permanent and is going to leave at some point, and that is the source of sorrow in this situation, that is coming from a state of not having complete knowledge or a complete picture of what's going on. So the more we want, the more we have to lose, so to speak. So as we give power to the world around us, the more we become slaves or servants. Yes, there is a temporary level of happiness that comes from having that illusion of having something, but in reality, it's like this endless chase after something that's not really there, that's really something you can hold or possess long term. So this I and my leads to ignorance, and then the ignorance further comes into identification with temporary labels. And there can be the body itself, that I am this physical body. This body is also temporary. Don't think any one of us feels we're going to be in this body 100 years from now. Relationships are also temporary, but we hold on to them like it's going to be there forever, or expect them to be there forever. Possessions, nationality, money, our titles or jobs. None of these are permanent or truly going to be there forever. They're all temporary. And these are just a few, but if you think about it for a moment, how many of these different identities or false identities, if we could call them, do we hold on to as who I am or who is mine? Another phenomenon that I want to just touch on that's related is something that's happening inside our brain that's related to a neurotransmitter chemical called serotonin. The reason I bring this up is because serotonin levels in our brain is related to happiness. And when our happiness level increases, the level of serotonin within the synapses of the nerves increases as well. And when there's depression or the level of happiness decreases, the level of serotonin also decreases. So the reason that I bring this up is because one of the things we're seeing that's very, very common now is issues with anxiety and depression. And most antidepressant medications work through these serotonin pathways, trying to increase the level of serotonin to bring that level of happiness into a more normal range. And the reason that this is happening, one of the reasons we can look at that this is happening, can be explained by an example that I'm going to use here of cigarettes or smoking. When we take in something like a cigarette, or it could be any drug of our choice, or other things, and you can think of what may be something that you use when you want to experience temporary happiness. So there's a baseline level of serotonin that we could say is in our brain. And when we take something outside of that to experience temporary happiness, so to speak, or pleasure, we have an increase or spike in that level of serotonin. And it lasts for a temporary period of time, but then the level comes down. And it goes below that baseline of normal pre-ingestion of whatever the chemical may be that brought that happiness. And that's when we start having cravings for another cigarette, or if it's chocolate, another piece of chocolate. So then, as we take that, the level goes up again, but it never goes back to that same peak as that first exposure. But the downward trend comes down lower than it did that first time. So then the craving for that product or whatever we want to call it increases. And so we take another. But if you look at the curve, you can see that it never gets back up to that high state the first time. And now it's starting to get to where the level is not even getting up to that normal baseline. So then this next picture is showing that we usually add something else then, because the first ingredient isn't bringing that same level of happiness, like coffee in this case. And that might get the levels up a little bit higher, but it doesn't do the same as in the beginning. So this, you can just see the general trend and to understand that this kind of is what happens in an addiction, where there's this peak of happiness that's experienced, but that level peak continues to drop over a period of time to where at some point we're in that experience of constant struggle to maintain a level of normalcy. And that's where we would call it depression. So there are many things, as we mentioned, that can affect our serotonin levels in this way. And these are some of them. And we can check. I'm sure there are many, many more that you could add to this. If any of these have this kind of effect or influence on us. One thing I want to touch on that I see a lot in day-to-day work environment now is this addiction with internet and computers and social media with children. And it really has, increased the amount of depression that we are seeing in children. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Probably over 20 years ago, when I started practicing, this is not an issue at all. And even depression in younger children was very rare. I would say maybe 1 to 2% of the children that were in the practice that were being taken care of were affected by these things. And now, 20 years later, looking at these families, I'd say probably 30 to 40% are dealing with some sort of mental health issue related to either an addiction or some type of dependency. So it's become very challenging trying to address these issues, but majority of the time, these families don't realize and almost innocently fall into this trap of allowing the children to have unlimited access and time to these indulgences, we could say, or sometimes they happen to be convenient babysitters, but it comes with a cost, comes at a price. And it's very challenging once they get into this pattern of addiction to bring them out of that state. And we'll talk about why this phenomenon is, being seen more and more. So psychologists say our society has now become a society of addicts, or a low serotonin society. And we're, in a way, unknowingly creating this. So it's a web that we've created, knowingly, unknowingly, based on this desire and expectation from the outside environment, from the external environment, that doesn't have a long-term return that's sustainable. So how do we free ourselves? Any thoughts? Something to reflect on for a few moments. So the responsibility falls on us. Where to start? Well, one perspective I'd like to share is to step back and see, as someone mentioned, if we can be detached observers of these things. It's not that we have to leave these things, but to have a different perspective towards, first of all, this body that's temporary, the relationships that we hold that are temporary, the roles we play that are temporary, to have a more clear view of that it is temporary, and to have an attitude of gratefulness for those things being there, but not having an expectation that it's going to be there forever. And as we do that, it can help transition us to an upward spiral, we would call it, where there is more freedom and clarity and seeing things from a higher perspective. It's a silly example of a person who identifies with the plant by taking care of it for a while and then starts to form an identity around this plant of, this is my plant, I took care of it, I look after it. But if we can retain that separation, that the plant doesn't belong to me, it's just something I'm taking care of as a trustee temporarily, that can give a certain level of peace. Whereas if we identify with it, then anything that happens to that plant can affect me. As an example of a plant can be replaced here with a child, a job title, a possession of value like a house or a car. If anything happens to any of those things or people that we connect with and identify with, then that can become a trap. But if there is that clarity that these are temporary connections and relationships that doesn't define me, then there can be true peace in that relationship. So we're not affected then by criticism or praise. And then there is a state of freedom and a state of mastery over that relationship. And that's what defines what a detached observer is. One who is able to be emotionally independent, whether that object or that relationship or possession is there or not there. We're still involved, still playing our parts of taking care of the plant or the child, or playing our roles in our jobs, but it doesn't define who I am. Trustee is a good way to think of that relationship. Another way to see it is to be seeing yourself even as a guest in this body and in this world, temporarily visiting. So just reflect for a moment, if you can, what it would be like if we could be detached from the body, from the relationships, from the possessions, places, everything around us, just watching, seeing, interacting, but not owning anything or anyone, not needing anything or anyone. It's one way to look at the state, what we call soul consciousness, or the consciousness of being aware of the true being that is using the costume of this body, the vehicle of this body, to interact and interface with the world. So what is a model of soul conscious person, and how does he live in this world? So one way to see this is using the image of a star as the soul, or this true self, this non-physical being that comes into the physical world, takes on a costume, and plays the part, plays different roles as mother, as teacher, as daughter, wife, temporary roles that will finish, but fully involved while playing the part, knowing that these are temporary parts. And at the end of the journey of this world drama stage, playing different parts, this invisible traveler and actor returns back to its original home. And in this frame of reference, or in this way of seeing the world, as this non-physical interacting with the physical temporary world, one thing that is really becomes clear is that experience of being in a space that we would call the primary reality, or the home, where we're completely secure. And this space is secure because this being, that's non-physical being, that's the traveler, is beyond harm. Nothing in the physical world, neither heat or fire or water, none of those things can harm this true self the non-physical, invisible traveler. So once that awareness is there, then one can truly experience that peace that's there originally within each one of us. And when there's that feeling of safety, then we naturally have love for all souls, all others who are also the same. And that brings that feeling of contentment where nothing is needed and nothing is lacking because the soul is already holding all these original qualities that it's forgotten about. And that's where the silent contentment and bliss comes from. When there is that clarity, then there's a bigger map, knowledge of the bigger picture. This can bring a sustainable happiness, an eternal state of happiness, as long as there's awareness of it. Then we see the physical world from a different perspective, from the state of freedom, from the state of being a master of the self and a master of the environment that we're in. We're not looking for happiness through those things because there's already that state of contentment and bliss within the self. And there's this clarity that there is nothing that can be owned by in the physical world because it is temporary. And the freedom that comes with that is that we know that we can't lose anything either. Because we don't need anything, don't own anything, can't lose anything. So the bigger picture, when that's there, then we can operate from a completely different frame of reference, which changes the whole picture. There's no dependency on anything or anyone, complete freedom to live from that space of security, safety. Does that sound like a reasonable place to live from? Or does it sound like it's a fairy tale world? Something to think about. But if everything in our life is perfectly good now, it's not necessary to think of this perspective. But if there are things that are not, working the way we like, it's good to consider a different perspective and see if it brings lightness, if it brings freedom. And if it helps on your spiritual effort and your spiritual journey, then use it. If it doesn't, none of these things that are being shared are for you to take blindly, but for us to all consider and experiment with and see if it makes sense to use this information, use this knowledge, make it yours, and see how it changes your life, your perspective on life, and your way of living your life. So from that perspective, everything that's here in the physical world is seen as extra, as a gift. And so there's lightness and freedom again. So I think we'll stop there for now. Do you have any questions for me at this point before we continue some other areas of discussion? need a few moments to digest. I went through it pretty fast. It would take more time.
Yeah. I don't see any questions posted in the chat, so they probably can open their
Okay.
mic and ask themselves.
Yeah, I had a comment. So sometimes it's okay to think of this thing when it's like one thing wrong or two, but when multiple things come at us, it becomes harder to, how do you control at that point, That's,
Yeah,
it's also a challenge.
that is true. It's easy when the situations are small and easy to dismiss. But the beauty of this model is practicing when things are good, when things are not so heavy. It's like a muscle that we have to develop. We haven't had this bigger picture for a long time. It was our original, according to the Raja Yoga study, was the original state of our being. We all had that full clarity of this world being temporary and ourselves being eternal, immortal beings that we're just visiting here. So see this whole drama that's happening in our life, the whole um, uh, story that's unfolding. If we could see it as a cartoon or as a film, we expect there to be dramatic scenes. We expect there to be exciting scenes. We expect there to be action scenes. When we go to a movie, we don't expect it to be just small things. We expect there to be big things. The more bigger, bigger the scenes, the bigger the excitement, the more we like it, right? We pay extra for those kinds of movies to entertain us. So it takes a bit of practice and a bit of strengthening that intellect we call the power of the intellect to be able to keep seeing the bigger picture as things get more and more serious. So initially, we have to practice with small things, but the more often we step back and experience that home, that experience of our true state of safety, and know without a doubt that no matter what happens in the story, we are safe, and that cannot be changed by anything in the story. If you're going to a movie and you're watching a movie and the movie has terrible, catastrophic scenes, but you're going to step back and go home after the movie ends, are you affected by the movie or by the dramatic scenes that are happening in the movie?
No.
Right? So that a similar way, it really takes a broad intellect, we say, or a mature intellect to be able to step back and see that. Just like with children when they're young and they see a movie, they get pulled into it. And we do too sometimes if we get really into the scenes and we forget that it's a movie, we can get emotional about it. But we know better than a young child that separation. That's why we're able to keep that clarity. Similarly, because this movie of the world that we're part of is so good, it's so convincing that it does pull us into it sometimes. And then we forget that truth of that separation, that independence from the character, even this character, is separate from this true self, this being of living energy that is on a journey and has possibly played multiple characters, taken on multiple costumes. This is just one of the characters that is, being played out right now. So having that clarity, the more we practice, the more we stay in that awareness, we can become stronger and stronger and staying out of the story and not getting pulled into the story where we lose ourselves in the story. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's good because then your focus is on your role. But do you have any tip on? We often get into other people's roles, you know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's true. Especially like here, the ones that we're closest to is the hard ones not to interfere with their roles, right? Um, yeah, children, I think, especially are hard for parents. Sure, most of you that have children know that because we are temporary guardians, playing the role of temporary guardians, but understanding, even though, for example, with a child, that they're on their own journey, we can be there and interact and give guidance as per our part, but they have to walk their walk on their journey. And we can't change that. Just like if you were doing like a children's play, and there was a child playing a certain role and you were playing the role of a parent, you have to do your lines, they have to do their lines. You can't go and change their lines while you're playing your part. So if we can see it that way, then it's easier sometimes to not interfere with others. One thing that's been realized recently, one of the most helpful things has been to see them as those perfect beings of light back home, that they're safe, just like every soul that is immortal and that is eternal is safe, because we are coming here, playing our part, and going home. Just remembering that they are safe has helped a lot here. Usually when there's emotional upset about they're doing something that is not quite good, that could get into future issues, etc., etc., that's when there's a reaction coming up as a mother or parent role. So once that clarity is there, that no matter what happens in their part in this story, they are ultimately safe. The soul, that spiritual being, is safe eternally. And that has helped a great deal. And to be able to look at that being as that eternal, original being of pure, peaceful, loveful state of being, to see that has changed a lot. For some reason, it's a phenomenon that's hard to explain. But when we're able to see the truth of the other, somehow it shifts the dynamics of the relationship. So instead of having to change their story, change their role or drama, it's like it shifts on its own because we're in that state of clarity. That makes sense. Not sure if that came through.
Yeah, thank you.
So if no one else has any questions, or questions coming up as of yet, we can take a few moments and just see if we can come into that experience of our own truth. Because that ultimately is what's going to shift the reality of what we're seeing and how we are able to experience this drama. And it's what's going to strengthen the intellect, is not just knowing about this possibility, but to experience it from a very deep space. So would you like to do that for a few moments? Okay. We're supposed to go through this in the beginning as well, just to help us to relax first and become alert. Any times that for reflection, meditation, it's good to check the body. Make sure that the body is relaxed, the back is straight, and the breathing is natural. Take a deep breath in. Starting from the lower legs, going to tighten and relax the calf muscles. Notice the difference as it relaxes. Take another deep breath in. Focus on the thighs. Tighten and relax. Notice the difference. Now the lower back. The upper back and shoulders. Inhale and exhale. Now the face and the jaw. And bring your attention to the space behind the eyes. Become aware of the invisible observer, the true self that is seeing through the eyes, listening through the ears, experiencing everything and making sense of it. But this observer, not judging, just watching. Now, in a second, see the image of itself of a sparkling star in the sky beyond the physical sky. Is a dimension of golden light, dimension of silence and stillness. A region of peace and stability where there is no change, no sound. It's timeless, changeless. And the stability of the space, this region, creates a deep feeling of safety, security. unbroken peace. And in this experience, one is able to recall feelings of deep and unconditional love because he feels beyond harm. This brings a feeling of joy that's beyond anything that can be experienced by the senses. A silent contentment and bliss, which brings power, awareness of the power that's naturally there within the soul, within the true self. Of the clarity and the contrast between the constancy and stability of the home and the noise and movement of the physical drama world down below, far, far away. And just being able to hold this truth, hold this experience, even for a few seconds, recharges this inner being of light, the sparkling star, this immortal and eternal light. And when we're ready, approaching the physical world's trauma world stage, hold that clarity, hold that peace, and that knowing of the truth of this dimension beyond. There's a feeling of everything in the physical world being an extra gift. Taking another deep breath, come back to the awareness of the body in the room. How is the concentration?
Good.
Is it helpful?
Yes.
Anything you'd like to share? Any challenges or experiences?
I think before the class, my body was quite stiff. You know, it's much relaxed now, and the mind also feels lighter.
Very good. A little bit of attention can make such a difference. You know, it's amazing that We spend so much of our day taking care of the physical body. How much attention do we give to the mind, right? Like driving a car and never putting fuel in it. You know? How long can we go for our phones if we never plugged it in to charge? You know? Then we wonder why we're running into issues with mental health. Society as a whole. I think a little bit of attention, a little bit of effort can go a long way. But repeatedly coming back to this awareness, you know, it's nice that everyone may have benefited by hearing something useful and could have some temporary benefit from that. But to be able to really maximize the experience and continually take benefit, it has to be practiced regularly, consistent. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to look into some of the classes offered at Enhance Center. There's a variety of courses that can help you on this, in this practice, on this journey. So looking at the time, we'll stop there unless there's other questions. It was lovely sharing these moments with everyone, and hope we'll meet again soon.
Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Om Shanti.
Thank you, Annie. It was lovely. I think everyone enjoyed the talk, and hopefully we'll have you soon back again with us. So thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate your time and your effort and your dedication to be with us. So we'll meet again next Thursday with the new topic. See you. Good night.
Thank you. Om Shanti. Have a good night, everybody.
Om Shanti. Thank you.